Welcome, everyone, to the February 1st meeting of the Lane Community College Board of Education. My name is Rosie Pryor, and I am the chair of the board. And I ask that you call the roll.
Rosie Pryor,
Here.
Steve Mattel,
Here.
Mike Eister,
Here.
Austin Fulnagi,
Here.
Lisa Fragola,
Here.
Holly Johnson, Angela Van Kraus.
Thank you. We begin our meetings each time with a land recognition. And this evening, Rachel Knighton is going to read our land recognition. Thank you and welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. We acknowledge that the land on which Lane Community College is built is the traditional land of the Kalapuya people. I ask you to join me in acknowledging Indigenous communities, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. I also ask you to consider taking action. I'm going to share portions of a letter to the editor written by LCC students currently enrolled in Chinook Wawa 202 regarding federal recognition of the Chinook Indian Nation, published January 19th, 2023 in the LCC Torch. From time immemorial, Indigenous peoples have lived in the lands around the mouth of the Columbia River. Today, there are 5 tribes: Cathlamet, Lower Chinook, Willapa, Wakayakum, and Clatsop. And together, they make up the Chinook Indian Nation with 3,000 enrolled members. Reprehensibly, the U.S. government does not give federal recognition to the Chinook Indian Nation. We write this letter to decry that wrong and to ask you to help the Chinook Indian Nation in their fight for federal recognition. Concretely, being federally recognized would provide their communities access to crucial federal funding. And then I'm skipping part of the letter, which I invite you to read. It's available online. The letter concludes, you should visit the Chinook Indian Nation's website to learn more and sign their petition. Then you should write to your government representatives. Tell them that Chinook people are Indigenous people and they must be federally recognized. If you can give money to Chinook Indian Nation, you should do so. Also, you should tell everyone about this. Tell your friends, tell your mom, tell your teachers, tell your newspaper, tell your social media fans. Tell them what you know. They should all help too. This letter was authored by Jeannie Lee Baldwin, Madison Fowler Niblock, Lynn Jeffries, and the instructor of the course is Beth Shepard. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any changes or additions to this evening's agenda? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
There a second? Lisa, thank you. Will you call the roll, please?
Yes. Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Steve Mattel.
Aye.
Mike Eister,
Aye.
Austin Fulnagi,
Aye.
Lisa Fragola,
Aye.
Holly Johnson,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus.
Aye.
Thank you. The agenda is adopted, which brings us to public comment. Do we have individuals present or online who wish to be heard?
Yes, we have both. So I will go back and forth. David Eigel.
I've appeared before you before electronically. This is my first time in person. My concern has to do with the history of this community, which has been very sullied from various sources, including the University of Oregon and the Lane County History Museum. I'm particularly became focused on Professor Dunn when the building honoring him in 2016 was denamed on campus. And I'm happy and sad to report that the report that deals with him, and I've now furnished all the members of the board electronically with copies of this, supporting what I'm saying is a complete fraud and a hoax. Professor Dunn was not the head of the local clan, nor was he acting with him, nor was there a violent white supremacist clan here in the 1920s. There were chapters of a somewhat seedily sold fraternal order called the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, and they were hustling people for $10 bills for annual memberships. And this is how the story gets twisted, because their big cause was allegedly supporting prohibition enforcement, but that's beyond our scope. I'm here today to urge you to learn about this and spread the word. And also, I hope and I'm approaching other educational institutions, other institutions, that will step forward and find ways to honor Professor Dunn, who, as it happens, is the very opposite of what he was presented as being. He's very ecumenical. He's a descendant of one of the most heroic abolitionist families in America. I have handed out for you today. This talks about Professor Dunn in 1928 in the press, talking about how his age 3, his first theater appearance was as playing the role of Little Harry, the black slave child in Uncle Tom's Cabin, in a Eugene production of Uncle Tom's Cabin. On the other side, you'll see this is what they actually said about him when Arthur Fleming, the noted civil rights activist, U of O president, asked the state board to honor Professor Dunn by naming this building for him. This is what was on the plaque. You'll notice there's nothing whatsoever there about him being a Klan leader, because it never happened. And I've documented this all. So I please find ways to honor Professor Dunn and to get the word out that this is a lot of nonsense. I thank you for your help in this matter. And if I can answer anybody's questions in the future, don't hesitate to contact me. I'm happy to oblige. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tracy Weimer.
Tracy, are you there?
Tracy, can we have you hold on for just a moment, please? We're dealing with audio settings in the room. I can hear it coming from the owl.
Is it this?
Yeah.
That's the, well, yeah, it's actually in, but yeah, it's also controlled. Yeah. It's
Voice over video.
looking at here. She's right.
Is it turned up?
Yes, it is.
Tracy, can you try speaking again, please?
I can. I sent a link to a voiceover I did for my testimony tonight, so I didn't wander off. Would you rather run that, or because I don't know what the audio issue is? I've been having trouble with my laptop actually all week about sound.
We can hear you just fine.
Well, right, when I run the recording I made for the testimony, though, I'm not sure. I think that might have been the issue. Let's see. Let's try again. Shall we try again?
Would you like to just speak to the board? I think that might work the best.
Okay. Well, my name is Tracy Weimer. I'm the project coordinator in the tutoring department. I was a student at Lane from 2009 to 2013. I transferred to U of O, and then when I finished my Bachelor of Science degree, I came back to work at Lane in 2016. While I was at U of O, I kept close contact with Lane, LCC, ASLCC, and the Multicultural Center. And folks might recognize me. I was at the MLK celebration the last, since 2013, 10 years. The reason why I'm here tonight, or why I want to speak, is about a work group about the rainy day pantry. So there's a work group that's been created that's called the, I believe it's Student Food Insecurity Work Group or something to that effect. And the work group is made up of 15 folks, 11 of which are managers. And this is, it's supposed to be a stakeholder type of situation. And that's why I had it recorded, so I wouldn't wander off and, start doing footnotes and whatnot. But the issue that I'm concerned with is in the future, if that's what a quote unquote stakeholder work group looks like, 11 managers, 1 student who was afraid to speak, 1 faculty coordinator, and 2 staff members who have no relation to the pantry. And there are other staff members who do have a relation to the pantry that were not invited and actually have been kept off of this work group. So I'm kind of here to plead to the board to restate whether you have support for there being an on-campus pantry. And folks keep telling me that nobody's going to close the pantry, nobody's going to close the pantry. But when Carl came to Diversity Council, which heard testimony on this topic, and I can provide that to you if you'd like to see it, I lost track of my thought. Carl, the most he would say, the current director of the area, the most he would say was pretty sure. He's pretty sure the pantry is going to come back online. And pretty sure is not good enough. 11 managers in a 15-person group is not stakeholder involvement. And I would just like for folks to hear that. I've been talking all over the place. And the reason I'm so adamant about this is because I reached out to my union because it's, stakeholder involvement. Great, I volunteer. Well, sucks to be me, apparently, there's no room. Okay, there's no room for any more voices. And it was just dictated out that these folks, and nobody would even answer to me who these folks were. I had to go on like a major hunt to get the names to find out there's 11 managers. So that's what I got. Thank you.
Thank you for persevering to speak to the board. Let me assure you and any others who speak to the board this evening that the board takes seriously all the statements and comments that are made to it each board meeting. However, we typically will refer these to administration to determine if there is additional information that might be needed. So that's what will happen in this situation. I thank you for your testimony.
Wendy Simmons.
Yeah, hi, my name's Wendy Simmons. I'm a faculty member in the Health Professions Health and Physical Education Division, and I serve on the LCCEA Executive Council as the Vice President for Learning Advancement. I teach in the Fitness and Lifestyle Specialist Program, the FLS program, and today I want to share some of what we learned and accomplished through the academic program review process that we just went through for the first time. For a little background, after students earn their one-year FLS certificate, they are prepared for jobs in the health and fitness industry, and the majority go to work as personal trainers, group and exercise instructors, and/or health coaches. And they work with clients, diverse clients in a variety of settings, from gyms to recreation centers, hospitals, schools, and sometimes at clients' homes if they go into work for themselves. They also earn a 2-term Career Pathways Group Exercise Instructor Certificate, as that's embedded in the one-year curriculum. We found the APR process to be very insightful and helpful, and we were able to make very impactful changes right away. And we will continue to focus on what we can do to bring to long-term to meet student needs and help our students succeed. So here are some of the highlights of going through APR. With the help of Kathy Thomas in Institutional Research, or IR, we discovered that since the program started in 1995, we've maintained steady enrollment over the years, and we've averaged above 75% course capacity in our classes. We also found that data pulled from IR shows we have more first-generation students who are attending college for the first time, Pell recipients, students of color, and students with a lower GPA than the college does proportionally. So we are reaching a population that really needs our support and has had less opportunities to attend school beyond 12th grade. We looked at the strength of our marketing strategies and areas for improvement and realized we needed a greater social media presence. So we created a Facebook for graduates so that we could post networking, job, and professional development opportunities. We now have over 40 members in the Facebook group. We always thought we had excellent industry relationships that provide good employment opportunities, and the APR process confirmed this, that our reputation in the community is quite good, and that we have a highly functional advisory committee In serving our committee, the results showed that our curriculum is very appropriate for local industry need. In surveying our students, they continue to be very satisfied with our program. Most students felt prepared or exceptionally well prepared for the workforce based on the outcomes and skills identified as necessary for our graduates. Student feedback is also very, very positive about the quality of instruction and utility of skills learned. We also recognize a need through our peer reviewer and our advisory committee that students could use some specific skills and knowledge to work with older adults as that population is growing. I can speak for myself. Thus, this fall, we went through the curriculum development process to add and embed a 2-term Career Pathways Healthy Aging Certificate. And this is in the final stages of getting approved and added to our curriculum. We collaborated with our business and media departments, media arts department, as well as we heard from both our students and graduates that they want to market their services. So we added a career advancement and exploration elective so that students can now take classes on web design and business and in marketing, for example. It seems I'm out of time, but I just want to say that we really want to thank the APR process because we learned so much and will continue to improve our programs. And we really want to thank the APR coordinator, Kate Sullivan, who coached us through this process. She made it manageable and very meaningful and went way beyond the call of duty and helping us. And we could use about 4 more Kates. But again, we are grateful for this process at Lane. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
There's a Jonathan Wright.
Jonathan Wright, are you here for public comment?
No.
Okay, moving on to Eric Kim.
Was there? I think seems like
He's online.
He said no, didn't he? I asked him.
it was too quick. I don't know what he said.
I heard. Yeah, he said no.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So Eric Kim, yeah.
Good evening, Lane Community College Board of Education. My name's Eric Kim. I teach psychology in the social science department. As we have seen in the news, civil society is fragile. Taking courses in the social sciences, psychology, economics, sociology, history, anthropology, criminal justice, ethnic studies, political science, education, early childhood education, philosophy, GIS, human services, teaches students about what it takes to build and maintain civil society. Last time, I talked about Hermie from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Society told him to become a toy maker. Hermie's passion was to be a dentist. When we ignore a person and force them to become someone that they're not comfortable with, they feel alienated from society. They join the metaphorical island of misfit toys. However, in the real world, those alienated from society become the destructive rebels of society. I also talked about the egocentric bias, the tendency to think you contributed more to a group effort than you actually did because you can recall your contributions, but not that of the others. If you believe you contributed more to a group effort than you're getting credit for, you're going to feel cheated. Relating to civil society, if we don't think we're getting respected or our fair share, we're going to get angry and rebel against the current civil society. Learning psychology, sociology, history, political science, those are the ones that I relate to in my classes, helps us understand what creates inequalities and what reduces these inequalities and help create a civil society where people can feel accepted for who they are as a person. As a side note, the paradox of a tolerant society is that they can't tolerate the intolerant. For my part, I study the psychology of thinking, which includes biases and errors in judgment and decision-making. Despite the fact that young women pay less for car insurance than men, many people believe that women are bad drivers. I can't tell you why this is. You can ask the insurance companies, but I have my guesses. What I can tell you is why people have this false belief despite the evidence. What I can tell you is the psychological processes that lead to feelings of injustice. Again, my colleagues in sociology, history, and political science, together we weave the tapestry of understanding of a civil society. And that, my friends, will be left for another day. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for being here.
There's no one else.
Right.
That's it.
That's it. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone who made time to speak to the board tonight. Brings us to the president's report.
Yes, I'd like to begin my report with some really exciting news that our enrollment is up. This is the fourth week of the term, and these are the numbers that we report to the state. And so these are considered our official numbers. We're up 7.4% in enrollment. Our full-time equivalent percentage up is 8.9%. And the really good news here is that 26% of our students are new students this term. 26%. It's pretty astounding. We're excited about that. The Rainy Day Food Pantry will be reopening to serve students on February 8th. Also, I want to report about the campus climate town hall. We had about 180 attendees who participated in that town hall on January 25th. And we were excited about the interaction and engagement with the college by the college community and looking forward to the work ahead with the campus climate. I'm pleased also to recognize a couple of people who are new to our leadership team, Dr. Shelley Tinkham as the Vice President of Academic Affairs, and also Marlene Rocha, who's our Associate Vice President of Finance and Accounting. I'd like to also congratulate two of the faculty. One to Jim Garcia, who has just been recognized as receiving the Dale Parnell Distinguished Faculty Recognition from the American Association of Community Colleges. Really proud of Jim. And also Indira Marie Bakshi, English as a second language instructor, who's going to be he's going to be an English as a second language trainer, and that was awarded by the U.S. Department of State. We are actively engaged in the legislative season right now. And as you probably know, that Governor Kotek just released her biennial budget. We have had the honor of having several of the national congressional delegation visit us, but also locally here as well. And so we had Senator Ron Wyden join us in January, on January 11th, and he was here so that we could celebrate the $500,000 that's coming through a federal earmark. We've also had Senator James Manning and also State Representative John Lively within the last couple of weeks. We're very excited about that. And that is my report.
Thank you, President Bolter. Are there any items that any member of the board would like to pull from the consent agenda?
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mike.
Second.
Thank you, Austin. Would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Angela Van Kraus.
Aye.
Holly Johnson. She said aye.
She said aye.
Aye.
Lisa Fragola.
Aye.
Austin Fulnake.
Aye.
Mike Eister.
Aye.
Steve Mattel.
Aye.
Rosie Pryor.
Aye. The consent agenda is approved. Brings us to action items. The first one is Bond Oversight Committee vacant position timeline. We present this information to the board for your information in case you have any questions or concerns. If not, Austin has graciously agreed to take leadership of the effort to oversee the recruitment and interviewing of prospective candidates to replace one member of the Bond Oversight Committee. And this timeline information will inform the board as to when to expect that proposed replacement member for board approval. So if any questions or concerns from board members about the process? Thank you, Austin, for your leadership.
Yeah. Thank you for my fellow committee members, Angela and Lisa.
And thank you, Lisa, for your support on that effort. So we'll move on to action item number 2, which is new program, Healthy Aging. Dr. Balder.
Yes, we'll ask Patrick Blaine to come to the podium here just to answer any questions that the board may have about this particular program that was actually, I think there was a nice presentation to the board at the work session 2 weeks ago.
So questions from board members about the proposed new program? We're looking for board approval to move forward. Austin?
I'd like to make a motion that the board approve that the college begin offering the Healthy Aging Career Pathways Certificate.
Is there a second?
Second.
That was Mike. Would you like to speak to your motion?
First off, I'm really glad to see the certificate program be a career pathways. With my parents aging and being a caregiver for them on a part-time basis, I know there's a need for this in our community. I'm really glad that there's also we approached this using economic data and seeing that there's career pathways for this program and that there's a huge need within our community. So I look forward to seeing this program take shape. I want to appreciate ahead of time the students who want to take on this career path. And thank you.
Any other comments or questions, board members? I think we're ready. Oh, Angela.
Thank you. I wanted to just offer my appreciation for the editing of the background on this program. I think it's important that we sort of decouple this notion of weight management with strength and mobility and avoid the sort of temptation to fall into sort of body shaming that coupling sort of often brings. So anyway, I just wanted to thank you for making that adjustment to the background. I think it makes a lot of sense and is aligned with current research. I'm really excited about this program. I think it's really important to maintain strength and flexibility into old age. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or observations? Would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Mike Eister,
Aye.
Austin Fulnagi,
Aye.
Lisa Fragola,
Aye.
Holly Johnson,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Congratulations and thank you for this new and exciting program at Lane Community College.
Thank you all very much.
We're moving on to discussion items. The first is the Bleed magazine. President Bolger.
Sure. Yes, we'll have the team come up to present to you about the Bleed magazine. This is a really exciting program. It involves students and a very, very talented faculty member, and they'll tell you all about it.
Too much.
Okay, good deal.
Now that I got it.
I like that. There you go. Yep, no problem. Hi, my name is Tom Madison. I'm lead faculty for the graphic design program here at Lane Community College. I don't know what prompted this particular occasion to discuss this here and now, possibly because some of us went to Washington, D.C. Recently with students to go to the National Media Convention where we took Best of Show for the magazine, but we've been winning some of these awards that we'll go over for many years, but we're grateful to be here. I know that time is limited, so I'm going to kind of let people know what the Bleed is and give you a quick genesis and history, and then have some students here that might have an opportunity to give a testimonial, and we'll hopefully have a little time for Q&A. So the Bleed magazine, the genesis of the Bleed magazine started, and I'd like to honor a colleague who's not here, Susan Loudermilk, and myself in about 2009. had the opportunity to think about revamping the program from scratch. There's just a change of the guard. Unfortunately, my predecessor, Thomas Rubik, passed away of brain cancer. I was a part-time faculty member at that time, but had a lot of experience. And Susan, who was full-time faculty, asked for my help. And together, what we did was we surveyed community college programs on the West Coast of the United States in order to kind of get an understanding what different curriculums were going on in different places. We were also in what we call the I-5 group. Susan and I often coordinated this. We haven't done it since the pandemic, but we would get together with all the colleges, both 4-year and 2-year, about every 2 years, and all meet at one of our colleges. Sometimes we hosted at Lane Community College, and we would go over and do a roundtable discussion where we present what was new in our programs and what was going on. And so that was very instrumental in this as well. But then another little kind of incident happened where my nephew, Colin, happened to be going through Seattle Central Creative Academy. And I had a direct line with him to kind of interview him about his curriculum. And he put me in touch with his professors up there. And so I started having dialogue with them as well. So between the two of us, we covered California, Oregon, and Washington pretty well. Their program had a unique factor that we really liked, and that was that they had a capstone project where they would make a book. But in addition to making this book, they would work as a team with other students to hire each other for their different specialities. So if they had an area that was like photography, illustration, web, whatever it was, within their structure where they had kind of an umbrella where you could then specialize in these different shoots, they would say, will you be my photographer? And then, yes, will you be my illustrator? And they had this wonderful group project that is up on screen that I just felt like, wow, we need something like that. Susan and I decided we didn't want to copy them sort of verbatim. What we wanted to do is come up with our own. So we had the idea of having the students have a capstone project of creating a magazine that would involve all of the grads. So they would have to work together, delineate their roles, which I assisted with, but it's pretty much a student project. I mean, I launched it with, here are the roles, figure out who is what. I'll help solve any disputes. We have a quick vote if we need to, if more than 2 people want to be editors in chiefs. We typically have 2 EICs, 2 artistic directors, a series of reporters, photographers, and people just sort of filled in what their roles were going to be, and we worked it all out. So we figured that out, and we launched that as a not required, like a Art 199 experimental class in 2010. And this is the first bleed that we're seeing on screen, just a quick, kind of glimpse of it. The naming of it was kind of funny because it's one of those things that happened really fast. You're thinking, a bleed, by the way, is a graphic design term for when you print a little extra off the page and then cut it down so that all of the image goes off the page. In other words, you have to print and then cut it to get that to happen. And when you print that extra bit is called a bleed. I just said, got together with the first group of students who signed up to try to do this in 2010. And it went like this. What do you think we should call our magazine? And Kenny Ashcraft was sitting in the back and he just goes, what about the bleed? And we all just looked at each other and went, yeah, that sounds good. It has a little edge to it. It's kind of fun. And so that's how quickly we did that. So we produced the first bleed in 2010. Again, I'll just kind of rip through this history. And I'm just showing you 2011, 2013, slow, it's a little behind. Anyway, on through the years, we were doing this, having a grand old time. And then what happened was in 2015, budgets got tight. And we were working on a budget of about $5,000. I don't even remember where that money came from at that time. But the problem, of course, every once in a while would come up with, boy, we're really tight. It's $5,000. Do you really need it? Why do you need it? At that time, an interim dean, Rick Sims, said, Tom, if you guys entered some competitions or did some things to get some noise about this, it might just help. So I went to Dorothy Werner, who was running the Torch magazine, and they had won a lot of awards. And I said, Dorothy, what are the competitions that you can enter into? She said to me, well, the big daddy of them all is the Associated Collegiate Press Pacemaker Award through the National Media Convention, et cetera, et cetera. I said, okay. And she sent me a link. So here's how you apply to that. So the very next year, we went ahead and we submitted to that competition and won. And we've been winning quite regularly ever since, which is great. This particular one, this magazine was a retro new. The students actually, one of them her boyfriend worked at Voodoo Donuts. And so they actually baked the cover. Those are real donuts. Big, and they did a photography session where they got on a ladder and put on lights. And they were photographing these donuts from, about 10 to 12 feet up because they were big honking donuts. And we all ate them afterwards. And then we also entered into other categories and in this year, we got as high as 7th place for design of the year. And this is 4-year schools, 2-year schools, Canada and the United States. So it was pretty amazing. And then, this is, we were able to send one person from our team who happened to be also with the Torch. This is Andre Casey receiving the Pacemaker Award. And then we also got 3rd place for Best of Show. I'll make a little highlighter note on that and try to keep moving. Best of Show, in case you don't know what that is if you attend an event and you give a physical copy, you put all those physical copies out. The conference is 4 to 5 days. And throughout the course of this, then you look at the other magazines, and then it's a People's Choice Award. If you attend, you vote. So we came away with 3rd place for Best of Show in DC on that one. Again, keeping things moving here. In the following year, we were a finalist for the Pacemaker Award, but we got 2nd place for Design of the Year. So that was really exciting. Again, keeping things moving. If it will advance. Oh, shift key doesn't work. We won again in 2018, and then Bleed 10, our 10th anniversary edition. We won a Pacemaker Award, 2nd place for Best of Show that year, 5th place for Design of the Year. And we also had other honorable mentions. I think you were up for a final on one too that year, Tom. Infographic was also in the final column. In addition to that, I started working in the DMC with Brett in the marketing department, and we started entering into the National National Council of Marketing and Public Relations competitions. We took gold for that as well. And so now we're in 2 competitions, and that has continued to be a legacy. This is the 5th place Design of the Year that I kind of snuck in there really quick just to show you that. And for the first time since Andre was able to go with the Torch because they had budget for traveling to DC, when we had this, when we were announced that we were finalists, went to the president, found funding through the foundation, I believe. I think that's where it came. And we were able to send 2 of those people are here today to Washington, D.C. to have this experience. So this picture of them in D.C. One again in 2020, again in 2021, where we also, Heather Van Dorn, who is here, took 5th place for Design of the Year for the cover. And we also took gold for District 7 NCMPR. And then this is the last Bleed. Josh Rodriguez was editor-in-chief for volume 13, where we were finalists for the ACP Pacemaker Award. We were finalists for Design of the Year. We got gold for NCMPR Medallion Award District 7. And we finally, there we are in DC. I went this time. We finally took Best of Show. Awesome. So after all those efforts, and so that just happened. And that's the last one. The only other thing I want to say from a more of an academic standpoint, because awards are neat, is that there's a couple of things, and then I'm going to see if some of these students will give a testimony that are important for you in the academic world to understand that one of the other values of these things is external review of artifact. So it is excellent to get these things and to have, these awards on the wall, but it has also an impact on students doing a project where they have to work together in a very short timeline. They have 8 weeks to produce 52 pages. They do all the writing, the photography, the illustration, the layout. They're given a $5,000 budget. They have to get quotes. They have to talk to print shops, sometimes get multiple quotes. They go proof down at the printer and deal with problems, solve problems. But again, we also have an artifact where we have external review coming in from evaluations that they can see online at the national level of why that we won or didn't win and get that feedback. So it's an excellent source of education for all of us to have that external kind of a review. Josh, you want to say something? Step up to the mic.
Please do.
Awesome. I just wanted to say that this the Bleed magazine was such an awesome experience. I feel like I had a different kind of perspective coming into the program, as I nearly completed a 4-year graphic design program before coming to Lane to complete a 2-year program here. And it really opened my eyes. I did a lot of things during the graphic design program here that I didn't do in the prior program up at the Art Institute of Portland. And working through the Bleed just kind of opened my eyes to working with so many people directly, and also trying to manage everybody and trying to track down everybody to make sure that they were turning things in on time and whatnot. And it was really awesome a really awesome experience to go with Tom as well to DC. Like I wouldn't have wanted to go without him, honestly, coming back from the experience, because everything extracurricular that we did other than the competition, like going to the museums and whatnot, it was an experience I'll never forget, because anytime we had a question, Tom was right there to answer. He gave us knowledge on the paintings, the artist, everything. And it was just a phenomenal experience. So thank you for sending us, and thank you again.
I'm Heather Van Dorn, and I came to Lane as a non-traditional student, and life just kind of dealt me a interesting blow. So I was wondering what I was going to do with the rest of my life, and had some graphic design background. I came to Tom and I said, are there any classes I can just take to like continue my my week freelance career? And he said, well, it's actually a whole program, and you have to kind of apply, and you go through a portfolio review, and it's a thing. So I kind of did a little more research, and I found that this program was nationally recognized, and that they won awards for this magazine. And that was it. That was my deciding factor. Instead of moving up to Corvallis or moving up to Portland, it was like, well, Lane Community College is right here, and I can get an excellent education with this national magazine that is recognized throughout the country. It's amazing. So I really appreciated that. And to have this magazine continue is awesome. And for sending for sending students to actually reap the benefits of all of the hard work. I unfortunately was the COVID crew where we didn't get to go. It was snatched away from us. We were supposed to go to New Orleans, and at the last minute, they kind of canceled it. So our entire production of the Bleed was done online and remotely, and having to get people to do their work and to get it was a miracle in and of itself, but we did it. And we have the awards to prove that we did a really good job. So thank you.
And Heather has done the magazine for the Raptor Center, Cascade Raptor Center, the last 2 years. So it's continuing to work in magazine.
I have to go on my tiptoes, or
You can pull that toward you, that microphone.
okay. My name is Kat Frink. I worked on the Bleed 10 with Tom Munch here. And there's a lot about the graphic design program here at LCC that prepares you for your career once you graduate. The classes are phenomenal. You do a lot of group projects, especially in your second year, but I will say that nothing comes as close to the real world experience as working on the Bleed. You don't have, you have some input from your instructors, but from the most part, everything is very student led and student run. You have to coordinate everything with your classmates. Everything that you do together on the magazine, you're doing in such a way that mimics the working environment. Even COVID people like Heather, that's very true to real life, because, during COVID, we all had to learn how to use Zoom. We had to learn how to use cloud-based, sharing and whatnot. And so, and even beyond working on the magazine, once it's printed, published in your hand, you then have something you can take with you to interviews. We have portfolios that we develop here in the class, in classes, but nothing compares to actually handing someone a magazine and saying, I made this. So just in terms of your career and where you go after LCC, the Bleed is phenomenal for preparing you for that environment.
Wonderful.
Hi, my name is Tom Munch. I graduated in 2019 with Kat, worked on the Bleed 10th anniversary edition as an art director. Most of what's been said covers what I wanted, but I wanted to say that project, collaborating with everyone in the class and making things work. That definitely mirrored my experience later at media companies that I worked at in town. So that are, handling everything from print and graphics to video and production and collaborating with all those people and getting things to fit together. Very much this helped prepare me for that. And I think, like Kat said, I put this on my resume as an art director for this magazine, and people were into that. They enjoyed that, and to hand them the magazine and the rest of the portfolio, it makes a big difference. So I had plenty of employers tell me that, for graphic design, they look to students from this school in this town, and because of the program and how successful we are.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I can tell you why you're here tonight. The question or the comment was made earlier. Tom, not sure why we're here. Well, I know I feel confident speaking on behalf of my colleagues on the board. You're here because we're incredibly proud of you. You're doing amazing things, and especially proud of faculty who take such an extraordinarily creative approach to instruction. It's fabulous. And the board is on a mission to educate itself about all the programs at Lane that we can possibly hear about every 2 weeks. So thank you for making the time to be with us tonight and talk to us. I'm not going to deprive my colleagues of having the opportunity to speak. Mike, you had your hand up?
Well, Brett's been waving his hand for.
I just wanted to add, Tom is very modest about the awards that they've won, but when he referenced the NCMPR, the National Council for Marketing and Public Relations and Community Colleges, the awards that they give out are awards that are done by the work is done by professional agencies, by professional graphic designers at colleges across the country. These typically are not awards that students would enter their work in. And so they're winning awards, competing against the best of the best in our business. And we just found out this week that they're a finalist for one of the gold or silver bronze awards at the National NCMPR conference coming up next month. So I'm not sure they even knew that yet, but one more award coming our way.
Congratulations. Well, I have Mike and then Austin.
So I was just wondering if you could tell us what some of your graduates are doing now, maybe just a couple, 3.
Oh, geez, the graphic designer for one, the senior graphic designer at Bell and Funk. Got graphic designers at, Josh is right now, just to let you know, project manager at QSL. And a lot of the reason that he got that job was because he was working with QSL, coordinating with them on the bleed, and then they ended up hiring him because they were so impressed with him. Heather actually works for my company, as does Tom now, but he's worked at 2 different companies, FPW, Mac Group, and then I hired him I have a graphic design company with a attached screen printing facility, my print manager. Kat works for what was Brett and Joe, but is now
Nav.
Right, Nav Creative. I mean, I don't know. I don't have enough time because I've been doing it for 13 years. So I've got averaging 20 grads a year, but we have data from our APR. We about 85% are employed in the field. High 70s are in Oregon, like 79. I don't have the data in front of me, but 73% or so are in Eugene. So I can give you kind of a level of how many get into the field from the program. And that's good for sort of a local economic driver kind of a mentality, is the idea, like Heather was saying, well, I can go to this program in Eugene. I don't have to switch schools, sell my house, take the kids to Portland. I can go get even if you already have a degree or whatever, we have a high percentage of people who already have at least a bachelor's degree in the program. Hey, I can go to Lane. I can do this thing for 2 years and change my career and stay at home. So our data in our APR has supported the idea that this is a very strong local engine.
Thanks.
Austin?
Yeah, I'm always amazed by the artistic and creative abilities of our students, and thank you so much to the faculty. I especially wanted to say thank you. And volume, I live up the McKenzie River and was impacted by the Holiday Farm Fire. And in volume 13, I wanted to really appreciate these photos. By the way, I could tell you're the photographer here, and the fact that you showed both not only the destruction but the rebirth, the recreation, and the regrowth of that community was really touching to see these photographs of that time period. And I just want to say that if there's an award I could give you, I would, these photographs are extraordinary. depictions throughout all these magazines is incredibly beautiful and creative, and amazing, absolutely amazing work.
Steve?
Yeah, question for you, Tom. It's an enormous amount of success, which creates, potential opportunity. Is the program the size you want it to be? Do you want to see it change, grow in any particular way? I'd like to hear.
I get asked that a lot. What I've found from, again, the data suggests that the amount of people that we graduate a year, which is averages over a 5-year period to be 19. We seem to have the jobs to, that seems to be good with that. When we looked at the possibility of doubling, because it's hard to do a half measure, there may be ways mathematically to do that with people moving in at different speeds. It's difficult. It could oversaturate the market. But it's mostly complicated to figure out how to increase it without doubling it. During the low enrollment, we always were fully enrolled, but we have an entry process because we have to. We have more people who want to do the program than we have seats for, but not so many more that we can really do much, with it. So like we're talking right now with low enrollment, we'll have 25 people apply for 22 seats. We're just in that spot. So it just works itself out where we have a little bit of an entry filter, a blind application process where they have to redesign the American $100 bill, write an essay, and have a certain GPA. But that's changed a little bit where we've lowered that GPA standard because of state stuff. So we're fine with that. I'm just saying we have a filter, but it's not so robust of a need that we can really do much with those extra 3 to, during high enrollment times, it might have been 33 people applying for 22 seats. So it's just an awkward number to be able to figure out how to expand it. But we have been really well supported. My dean, Ellen, is a great champion. We've got some money last year and completely revamped the classroom so that we have the option to go simultaneous with either Zoom or in person. We have an owl, and then we have several screens, and it's all designed sort of post-pandemic. I want to say post-apocalyptic. We were just joking about that earlier, so I have to be careful. Post-pandemic. And the reason is that, to speak to the question, the changes that I look for have been made. And that was that a phenomenon happened during the pandemic where several students said that the only reason they were in the program was because it was remote and they happened to be single mothers. And they were able to get a degree and get a meaningful graphic design degree. I was skeptical during the pandemic if that was something that was just, how we all were. It was like, what? I got to do what? I have 1 week to figure out what? And how can we even do this? And I was worried that the quality of the education would go into great decline. After 2 years, I think Heather's class, were you 100%? 100% remote. I proved to myself that it could be done. And so by continuing to have this opportunity to tune in how you want, which is how I want the program to be now, it allows people who might not otherwise have the opportunity to get an education in. And I feel good about the education they get. So some of the changes, that was about a $30,000 revamp that we got through some money. And so I feel very supported and feel like I have the tools that I need right now. Thank you for asking.
Well, I guess I would just follow up by saying I'd encourage you to, reconsider, because my sense is based on the success through Bleed that these students would be competitive in markets beyond Eugene Springfield. So we don't necessarily have to look just to whatever we can, that market accommodates.
And maybe through this remote thing could be an avenue, Steve, where we could look to open up the doors also to, since we're not getting the flow of students that we would need to expand it greatly. However, we could also bring in students from outside to study at Lane remotely, which has happened. I mean, some of our students ended up Tri-Cities, Vancouver, and other places. So that could be a way to expand that interest, and that could be a vehicle. So we could look to that.
Excellent.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
Our next item for discussion is the 2024 accreditation visit. President Bolger.
Yes, I'll ask Patrick Blaine to come up and talk about the timeline for the 2024 accreditation visit.
Good evening. And it's hard to follow that act. It's so powerful and inspiring, and reminds us of why we're here. So one of the ways that we, I don't know if I can have slides, Randy. Are they up? Okay, I'll wait for that to happen. But one of the reasons that we work with accreditation is precisely to show the good work that we're doing. And the Northwest Commission on Colleges and Universities in recent years, and ever since I've been more directly involved with them since July, has been really emphasizing that aspect of accreditation. It's not meant to be punitive by any stretch of the imagination. It's supposed to be a process that allows institutions to strengthen and get better at doing their jobs through peer evaluation. So the evaluators and other people involved with the commission that we work with all have the same interest in student success and institutional effectiveness that we do, as well as trying to kind of keep pushing as higher education entities, from the University of Oregon to the University of Washington, OSU, Lynn Benton Community College, places in Montana and Utah. All of those states have Northwest Commission members that are working together to try to figure out best practices and move things forward collectively. Slide, please. A few words on the basics of accreditation for anyone who might not be 100% familiar with it. You'll have heard of accreditation as a process. The Northwest Commission is our main accreditor for the college. So we have other accreditors in nursing and different programs, but the Northwest Commission is the accreditor authorized by the Department of Education in Washington, D.C. to evaluate us as an institution. And the process there is both evaluating and recognizing institutions for performance, integrity, and quality. And that's both for the educational community, whether that be K-12 or our higher ed partners, as well as for the public. So that when people come to us to get degrees, they have some confidence that those degrees, those programs are of quality, similar to a lot of the other programs you've been hearing about for some time now. So the Northwest Commission on Colleges and Universities is a voluntary association, and it's formed of peers in the states that I mentioned. California is in a different grouping. There are other regional accreditors throughout the country, such as the Higher Learning Commission in the Midwest. I think it's called Eastern States. I can't remember in the East side. And then there's a Southern states. For this part of the country, we work with Northwest Commission. And so accreditation is independent of the group or commission you're working with based on standards. And they all have different standards, but they tend to point the same direction. And so the Northwest Commission has two standards with a lot of substandards, and you can easily find those on their website by searching NWCCU 2020 standards. These standards are new as of 2020. And the basics of them, standard 1 includes student success, institutional mission, and effectiveness. Standard 2 is about governance, resources, and capacity. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of substandards there. And so our obligations with the Northwest Commission are various. We're a voluntary member of that commission. But we have everything from biweekly interaction with our liaison at the commission. We have yearly reporting that we do that's a little bit more limited. And then we have some key kind of touch points within the accreditation cycle, which is 7 years long. And the commission actually comes and does site visits, which they've now continued after the pandemic at two key points. And one is the mid-cycle visit, which is coming up for us in 2024. The other is what's called the EIE, and that stands for the Evaluation of Institutional Effectiveness. That's the one that we went through in 2021 with the report in 2022. So you
most of you probably remember that that one is the really big deal in the cycle. So can you have a slide switch, please? Slide. Is it stuck? Okay. So as I mentioned, there's the two kind of main points, the mid-cycle, which is coming up in 2024. That'll be our mid-cycle visit in the fall. And the EIE. The other it's here as a type of visit, but it's not really a physical visit. We have to submit a report for year 6, which is called the PRFR, or the Policies, Regulations, and Financial Review. So our next one will be the mid-cycle. And then a few years after that, we'll kind of be gearing up for that EIE, because the PRFR, or the Policies, Regulations, and Financial Review report sort of feeds into that very large self-study that we do for the evaluation of institutional effectiveness. Next slide, please. So our next one that we have coming up is the mid-cycle, and the function of the mid-cycle is to basically be formative and to be a conversation with a more limited team of evaluators than we would see during the EIE. And the real focus there is feedback on how we've been doing with any recommendations that we received during our previous 7-year visit, and giving us areas of improvement while we still have time to act on them. And so this one is mostly focused on Standard 1, which, if you remember, is focused on student success and institutional mission and effectiveness. And so that while we have to prepare for it and be ready for it, is definitely much more of a collegial learning opportunity, and kind of a real key time for us to not feel as if we're being tested so much as we want to show you what we've done so far, and had their feedback, the commission's feedback, on how that stacks up and where we might be sitting coming into that year 7. The two recommendations that we received among a lot of commendations during the year 7 visit in 2021 were centered on institutional effectiveness. And so they wanted us to evaluate internal communications, feedback, resource allocation, staffing sufficiency, and decision-making processes to make sure that they're inclusive of constituents to the extent possible. The other recommendation that we received in fall 2021 was centered around assessment, which was an area where we had significant improvement to make in the past. They were happy with the improvement we were showing, but they wanted to make sure that we maintained assessment of student learning as a key area of focus. And at that point in 2021, we were just kind of completing the planning phase of a system-wide assessment regime and starting implementation. Now, at this point, we're quite a bit farther into implementation, so we've certainly made progress there. Slide, please. For preparations for that mid-cycle visit, we've got a few things going on. We will need to have a steering committee for that, and we've begun the process of figuring out how that will work and possibly be different from the structure of steering committee that was used during the year 7. We're also working quite a bit with our new Watermark software, where a lot of our assessment and program review is living. And that's going to also be what we use to write our self-study for the mid-cycle visit, as well as our year 6 and year 7. So that system is going to be key. We'll need to continue documenting and working on our response to those two recommendations that I mentioned. communication plan will be being rolled out during the second half of the calendar year here and moving all through next year, because we really want to make sure that people are aware of what's happening and ready to kind of put on their best face and be proud of what we're accomplishing here. And then finally, we're working to increase campus involvement through those means. So those are the updates. The presentation was intended to give you an idea of what the accreditation cycle looked like, where we're at, and the preparations that we're making. Still quite a bit early, but on time for the mid-cycle. And in terms of our sister institutions in the commission, we seem to be very well placed for that. A lot of those that are doing mid-cycle visits this year are in earlier stages of preparation. So by beginning this work now, I think we're going to be in good shape. Yes.
Questions or comments from board members? Great report. Thank you very much.
Hey, Rosie. If any of the board members would like to review the standards for accreditation, it is in the board docs library under accreditation. It has all the 2020 standards.
Thank you. Thank you. Item C under discussion items, student success report, President Bolger.
Sure. In light of the presentation on accreditation, I think it's fitting for this and timely for this report on student success. This is a report that the board has asked for just not too long ago. And so we're excited to present this to you. And we've got our AVPs who are going to be doing that.
Great. This time I didn't sit down and then stand back up, getting used to standing here, but this will be the last time this evening that I do, and then you'll have other people to listen to. So what you have in front of you is a report on student success that was asked for. It began its life as a written report, and it's fairly lengthy given the time constraints. We'll probably move through it quickly. I'll be presenting sections of it, as will Grant Matthews and Don Whiting. The contents of this report include an overview of the report itself, credit success, career technical education or CTE success, persistence to second term, persistence to second year, 3, 4, and 6 year grad and transfer rates, completion of any award within 3 years, transfer in 3 years, and then pandemic and we got that section actually, the pandemic and order and promising effects. So what you have here is a series of snapshots and quite a bit of data. May I have a slide, please? Thanks. And one more. A series of metrics that we use to measure student success. And just as a very quick primer, we have a few terms. So credit course success is passing a credit course. That's how we define success in that context. Persistence, there's two kinds. There's remaining at the college for a second term. So that would be fall to winter, or for a second year, which is fall to fall. And then we look at transfer rates, graduation rates, and award. Award can be different because someone can get an award or certificate, but still have work to do on what their main path of studies is. And these were chosen, these particular snapshots were chosen because they reflect some patterns that we've been seeing during the pandemic period. And these are really our first look at numbers during that period and coming out of it. And they have some observations accompanying them. And we do see the impact of pandemic enrollment declines during the in these numbers, but on a proportional basis, the way that the populations are behaving, in many cases, that behavior or those historical patterns have remained stable throughout the pandemic, while the numbers have decreased. And so the headline conclusion for me in looking at some of this was that the numbers we're seeing are stable despite the really difficult conditions that the institution faced during those years, whether that was going almost entirely online, everything that was going on socially. The institution writ large did, I think, an admirable job in maintaining levels of service and maintaining levels of student success given the circumstances. However, we do notice in these numbers a really kind of glaring and apparent equity gap for students of color, and that's something that has really grabbed our attention and that we are going to continue working on.
Still waiting for my step stool behind this podium. Next slide, please. So we're first going to look at credit success by academic year. Next slide. So what we're looking at are the success rates of students enrolled by academic years. So from the years 2018 all the way through 2022, showing the chart on the left, the success rates versus not success. And then the chart on the right shows us the number of credit students that are enrolled or that were enrolled and the success rates by those numbers. And we can see the drop in enrollment through those numbers as well. But the annual success rates seem to remain the same despite some of the pandemic years. Next slide. So again, the chart on the left just showed the aggregate success rates, both pre-post and throughout the pandemic. And then that other chart on the right shows the drop in enrollment, but with the actual numbers of students as well.
Good evening. Thank you. So the numbers that we're presenting on our CTE success rates actually stemmed from some projects that we're working on an ongoing Carl D. Perkins grant, as we've focused our attention with the goals at that grant on collecting and looking at data for our CTE students more regularly and looking at the patterns. And go ahead and go to the next slide, and I'll just talk briefly about the next two slides, looking again at credit success for our CTE students. And again, the takeaway here is that what we see is that largely over the last several years, the success rates for students has remained stable. Not a lot of change. And that's true for both our student population as a whole, as well as our students of color, including Latinx. But again, to reiterate, in CTE, one of the biggest changes that we saw is over the last several years, an incredible decrease in participation. So for our generally, we saw a decrease of enrollment of by about 22% over the last 3 years. On the other side, when we look at our students of color, Latinx, that decrease was only about a 17% decrease in participation. So I was very pleased as I've looked at this to see that we're maintaining some of our participation. But again, as we look at career technical programs and otherwise in our area, that participation number is still low, but it was good to see that during the pandemic, the rate of participation did not decline as rapidly as our regular, as our full student population. But again, we do see some difference in success rates between our students of color and our general population of students. However, it is not as marked as some programs or some areas of the institution. So we do see that students, as they are able to participate in the career technical programs, they are seeing that success and continuing forward. You've got the next.
Great. Let me switch slide. Or is that done?
Just switch one. You can keep going. I talked about those two at the same time.
Another one. Okay, and I think this is actually done.
All right, so we're going to look at persistence from term to term. So starting students who would start in fall and their persistence to winter. Next slide, please. So in looking at this, it shows us the persistence from term to term. So rather than success. So we're not measuring success in this, we're measuring how students persist and how the college retains them from term to term, just starting in fall. It helps us identify how many students are registering, and then in fall term, and then again in winter term. So just looking at, are we retaining these students? Are they persisting, rather than that success rate? We do see a drop in 2021, which could be pandemic related, since that coincided with some of the vaccine mandates, more online classes, and just general pandemic trauma. Next slide. So this slide shows our persistence again by race and ethnicity. This is the disaggregated rate persistence, and these basically follow the aggregate numbers pretty closely. Next slide. So persistence from term to term is again different from success. This mirrors the lower enrollment numbers during the period somewhat. And while the lowest retention happened during the most difficult phase of the pandemic, and coincided with the vaccine mandates, 22 numbers are starting to show some recovery, but we're still not quite at pre-pandemic levels. Next slide.
So this is the other sort of persistence. We measure it over those two intervals, and this is the same two intervals that IPEDS measures for all institutions. This is persistence to second year. And there you're looking at the aggregate numbers of students that start in a given fall. You'll see the years at the bottom of the bars. And then in that year have continued to the next fall. So the one that I wanted to draw your attention to is that fourth bar that's a bit lower. You'll see that that's 2021. And as an aggregate number that jives with our enrollment numbers and with the kind of most severe effects of the pandemic. So confirming what we would expect to see, but it's always impactful to see it no matter how you see it. Next slide, please. If we disaggregate these numbers a little bit and look at our persistence to second year by age, what we notice is an odd pattern, and I don't have a good explanation for this, but it is something to look at, which is that the 41 and plus population shows a really significant bump up in 2021, and then comes down quite a bit in that following year in 2022. And looking at our pandemic numbers, we've known that they're going to present challenges because the years were completely outside of the historical characteristic. But you can look at what normal years or more normal years look like in that 2018, 2019, and 2020. But that's one thing that jumps out to me is that group of older students, which you could draw different conclusions, and really it would take work to figure out what would probably be a correct conclusion. Next slide, please. Here we're looking at persistence to second year by program type. And so this, the yellow bars show our CTE programs, and you'll see that those tend to be higher in persistence anyway, and that pattern persists throughout the pandemic. Where we see a real impact, and this was once again our enrollment, we can see it in there. In 2021, the transfer programs really took a dive. And the good news is that in 2022, they started to come back. And I'm very sure that when we see our 2023 numbers, we're going to see that start to come up. But the rate that they're at in 2022 is close to the historical average. Next slide, please. Here we have persistence to second year in race and ethnicity. And here's where we see a really kind of attention-grabbing difference. So for the 2018, 19, and 20 years at the bottom of those bars, that's our stable kind of pre-pandemic, historically predictable mix of numbers. And there's not a really, in this measure anyway, there's not a really huge equity gap. In 2021, we saw all of the groups looking kind of more depressed. And then in the post-pandemic in 2022, we see the white non-Latino population rebounding significantly, where we see a slower rebound in students of color and non-Latino, and then Latino of any race. One possible explanation for that, because we are looking at multiple year statistics, is that those particular communities were documentably much more affected by the social and economic effects of the pandemic. And it gives us an opportunity, I think, to say, we can see this population, and we want to do something about it. Next slide, please. So we're looking at, I'm just trying to make sure I'm not missing anything in my observations. I guess the big thing that I didn't mention already is in the CTE reduction was less severe, and a lot of that has to do with the cohort-based nature of their programs. CTE programs were also a lot more writ large. They were a lot more present on campus, and so students were able to, I think, maintain higher levels of engagement, as Grant mentioned before. And we'll move on to the next metric.
You can go ahead and move to the charts. The next three charts are looking at the graduation and transfer rates by cohort, looking at it in different ways. While we are a two-year community college, we typically look at a 3-year, a 4-year, and a 6-year graduation transfer rate. And this is because we know many of our students are part-time and have other obligations. And to get a better picture of what true success looks like, are they achieving their academic goals, we go out from what is considered kind of the 2-year norm to look at how they're doing as they continue to finish their degrees. And as we look at this, we can see that over time, we have kind of a very, I would say, young roller coaster. It's not a very exciting one. There's a little bit of a dip as we go throughout the years, but by and large, it's going up over the last several years with some dips here and there, which is positive. We've raised our graduation and transfer rates over the last many years, but slightly. The one observation is that during the pandemic, post-pandemic and the rates have been fairly stable as we look through it, not a lot of variation. And as we would expect, when you look at the 3-year, and Brett, if you want to move on to the 4-year and 6-year just quickly, we notice that the farther out we go, we do see students continuing to complete. They are finishing, and those graduation and transfer rates continue to go up. Again, the observation is that while our rates have been positive or stable, the enrollment has definitely been that continuing factor of decline over the last several years that impacts that.
Right. So now we'll look at completion of any award in 3 years. And as the department who prints and mails these diplomas, golly gee, it sure feels like a lot. So this is looking at all completions. It includes degrees and certificates, including short-term certificates within a 3-year time frame. So we have a little bit of an uptick there in 2019, and then we kind of drop back down in 2020, but still sort of maintaining that level and percentage of consistency through the years. Next slide, please. This is the completion of any award by our race and ethnicity, shows us completions, again, all degrees and certificates by those disaggregated numbers by race and ethnicity. Next slide, please. This is a comparison of students who have taken prior college. So they have come to us with some external non-lane college experience, and we've applied that toward their program versus the first time ever in college students. So those numbers are a little bit lower. So students who come to us who have no prior college or credit to apply, and then also the early college students who come to us having completed some early college in their high school. The aggregate numbers are relatively stable with a small uptick in 2021. International students have outperformed historical norm in 2020, 2021, and 2022. Yeah, next slide.
All right, so last metric to look at for the evening, and here we're looking at transfer to universities in 3 years. So the aggregate numbers you'll see have in proportionally, the proportion of our students who are at the institution that transfer to 4 years is relatively stable. It's ticked down a bit, but it hasn't changed all that much. Next slide, please. And there we've got race and ethnicity in transfer rates, and 2019 and 2020, we, as in some of the other metrics, start to see a bit of kind of it's noticeable and the pattern is different. And can likely be attributed to a lot of the same movement in students and enrollment, and likely has some of the same causes as other metrics of student success. Next slide, please. And this one, again, mirroring the previous set, is showing prior college. So the dark blue, the navy bars are prior college. That could include college now, could include studies at another community college. First time ever is our goldenrod. And then the gray is early college only. So we've got that metric as well. They've only had high school connections, college now programming in the high schools. Next slide. So our observations from that final group in transfer to four-year colleges is that the prior college transfer rates have remained stable throughout the pandemic, and the most recent breakdown by race and ethnicity appears to depart significantly from the historical pattern. And it is an area of attention, and we will absolutely want to be watching what it does moving into the future. It could soften, it could not, and we need to really keep an eye on it. The largest difference was the decrease in non-Latinx students of color, and that's shown, as we mentioned before, changes in other metrics. So that concludes the walkthrough of the statistics as well as the observations. The next report on student success will be delivered in the December business meeting. That will allow us to put in the next year's statistics and be able to look a little bit farther coming out of the pandemic, really start to draw some sharper conclusions. And if there are particular metrics that you all would like to see a focus on in that report, we'd encourage you to share that with the president, as well as if there's a change in format to that report or the presentation that you would like, we're all too happy to oblige.
We have overspent our time by about 7 minutes on this, and I'm trying to be a good facilitator. I don't want to deprive my colleagues of the opportunity to ask questions or make observations. So with your indulgence, we're going to continue to focus on this topic until the board members have had the opportunity to be heard. Mike?
I'm just wondering, I know it's early, but if you have any preliminary ideas about the disaggregated data, the students of color, how we might address that.
Sure. We've got a few initiatives already underway. One of the things that I meant to mention in the overview is that there is often a time lag because of the way numbers are collected and then sort of interpreting and analyzing them, and then designing and resourcing and implementing any interventions to try to address them, and then coming back and tracking the effectiveness of those interventions. But there are some early efforts underway. Student Affairs has been very engaged with this, and I'm sure Dawn would love to tell you more about that. There are retention initiatives that are linked to the Northwest Commission on Colleges and Universities Data Equity Fellowship that we're involved in, that have been mentioned in other meetings. Those are taking into account in a formative way, so ongoing. What are we seeing in equity gaps as that work is being conducted, not in post? And how can we make small changes or react to what we're seeing in the numbers in order to make that piece more effective? And I'd love to give my colleagues.
Yeah, I'll just mention quickly also, I believe that in the near future, you'll also be receiving a presentation from Dr. Jennifer Fry and her team on the guided pathways work, which I think very much addresses some of these this question and efforts that are going across campus to try and make sure that we are able to target all of our student populations and help them be successful in classes. So I look forward to that presentation and the types of initiatives that it'll help demonstrate as well.
And without giving anything away, the student success and early outreach presentation that will follow this, quite timely and appropriate. But Dr. Reeder will talk a little bit about cultural wealth and how we've weaved that into the early outreach program as well.
I do. Yep. Thank you for the report. I think it's a really useful one for us to be looking at on a regular basis. So I'm glad to see that you're queuing it up already for what sounds like an annual review. If not, that's certainly what I'd ask for. So the numbers for me coming from a four-year institution are shocking, right? We call it retention rates at a four-year institution, and those numbers are like in the 90s. So my orientation is just off. So what would be useful for me is to have some kind of, benchmarks. What do we expect from two-year institutions in the state or your peer set or nationally or whatever it is that's out there? Would be really helpful to me. I don't know how to respond at this point. And I really find the persistence data really interesting. And so I'll have to think about it some more, and I'll, on your recommendation, I'll talk to Stephanie about, other ways that we could, try to understand and take advantage of those persistence numbers, right? We have had a lot of presentations over the years about how students leave their programs because they think they're done, or they are from their perspective. They got a job offer, et cetera. From their perspective, they've succeeded. They're ready to go. They're happy with what they got from Lane. They're moving on. From our perspective, it doesn't look so good. It would be interesting to, to try and dig into that kind of stuff a little bit.
Yeah, thanks. We'll work to add some context to the report, as well as look at some of the non-traditional forms of success that we look at.
Other questions, observations? Lisa?
Yeah, similar to Steve, I would really appreciate some context for how do we compare nationally? How do we compare to other comparable community colleges? How do we compare to Oregon? Because just when you look at the percentages, I think we're trained to be like, oh, 90% is good, 40% is bad, but like, what should we be looking for in those percentages? So that would be helpful.
Absolutely. Having come from the four-year world myself 2 year, when I first began to see those numbers, I was shocked, and I don't think we should ever be satisfied with numbers that low, but I believe we can provide you some context to see that while we can always improve, and any student that does not finish their degree path, or any student that leaves the institution before achieving success for them is one too many. But yeah, we would be very happy to provide you with a little bit more context.
Austin?
I mean, I have several questions, but a quick one, because since we're over time here, international students, their persistency percentages, what explains their higher percentage?
They can't go.
They kind of have to stay.
Yeah, totally.
So-
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah,
So they
totally.
stay or they transfer,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's complicated for them in that, you know, they kind of have to stay engaged in school, transfer or work. So there's some obligations that are required and probably play into that.
Do additional support services also play into that at all?
Maybe can you?
Like academic advisors, just support systems, participation in clubs, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that the international programs is a pretty sort of tight program. They have their own kind of academic advising and retention coordinators that they work with, the students work with, you know, term over term to make sure that they're in the classes that they need to stay compliant.
Gotcha. Okay.
Steve?
Yeah, the other thought that I had as far as subsequent reports, the category, sorry, I'm trying to pull it up right now. When you disaggregate and you have I think it's like students of color, non-Latino, I think is how the category is labeled. My sense is that the absolute numbers are fairly small, just given the percentages. So it would be, I think, given that, right, it's easy for those numbers to swing much more wildly with a few people that have for circumstances that may have nothing to do with anything. That stuff can swing. So I think it'd be useful to see the absolute numbers in those cases.
I can respond to that a little bit. We will try to make that happen. There are some concerns with showing absolute numbers related when they're so small. Related to demographic categories. It might be difficult to put them into public reports because they could potentially create problems with disclosure.
I think my interest is not so much in, you know, outing them or finding out who they are and nothing like that. Of course, but it's really to remind ourselves that our data might not be as useful to us in those circumstances as we'd like to think.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other hands up, so thank you for this excellent report. I think it's a terrific first effort, and I'm grateful that we're going down this road. It's the data we've needed all along, so thank you. Our final discussion item this evening is success coaches and early outreach. President Bolger.
Yes, well, Dawn Whiting is at the podium and she's going to introduce this presentation.
Yes, great. So stay here once again. So this is a really timely report following that student success report that you just heard about or just saw. We want to share some of the broad outreach efforts that we're working on and student affairs to help identify student needs and access to resources. The college has moved into a more proactive model of outreach rather than, you know, sort of waiting for a student to have an unsuccessful term or, you know, face some challenges. We're working towards providing this help and support before those challenges or before those stumbling areas happen. We had found that our academic progress standards, or APS as we called it previously, that model was a little bit more reactive. And so Dr. Jane Reeder has really been working, our Dean of Student Success has been working on developing a model that is a lot more proactive and addresses those student needs, you know, early on in the process. So I'm very proud to introduce her. Dr. Jane Reeder is going to tell you more about the early outreach program.
Good evening, everybody. I will try not to hack my way through this. I apologize for earlier on. So as Dawn was kind of did most of my introduction for me, this was a program that we developed in response to retention efforts across the college. The APS system had been in place for many years based on an old grant, Title III grant, and it was doing a fabulous job. The redesign was in no way a reflection on the work that they did. It was just, we were changing things. Our students have changed, and particularly since the pandemic, things have changed. So we combined, as our first year experience went away, we took the staff and added a staff member. There are 3 staff members that do all this work, which is incredibly impressive. And so we'd like to tell you about it. I hate the fact that he's over there. Pressing the button. Okay. So, what does it take for a student to be successful? Well, national data tells us that if we engage a student within the first 4 weeks of term, or indeed the first 4 weeks when a student starts to have an issue, which could be missing a class or not putting homework in, that the retention rate for that student increases, as does the eventual graduation rate. We also know that term grade at week 4 is predictive of the end of term grade. So students doing okay, B-ish, have a 91% likelihood of a C or better by the end of the term or semester. Students who are at an unsatisfactory level, so they're coming into it with a C and probably going to drop down more, have a 54% chance of ending the term lower than a C. So when we look at those things, we can see how important it is to keep those grades and to get that early intervention. And we also know from national data that 1 D or F on a college transcript means a 30% drop in graduation rate for that cohort. And that is pretty strong evidence that we need to get in there as fast as possible. So we created the early outreach program. And as Dawn commented on, we're moving from being reactive to proactive. We base the program in some strong student development theory, especially with Perry and the cognitive structure, which was chosen because it is inclusive of all students and looks at the students as they develop through the college. We also looked at what a philosophy was going to be because we wanted to base in that. And we looked at Freire and Dewey. And Freire is really chosen because it does engage students in a problem posing approach. In other words, when a student is an active learner, they become more invested in their education. They become more invested in wanting to learn. And there was a social justice piece that was built into that. And of course, Dewey with social cognitivism, again, its students are relying on us to create the knowledge that they have. And so it's important for us as an institution to give them that knowledge so that they can develop their own ways of thinking, that they can develop their own knowledge and inquiry. So we went from teaching to more of a learning and through relational interactions based on those philosophies and those theories. But what was really important is that education has always been based on a deficit model. We base education for many, many years on the fact that based on somebody's psychosocial background, that they may not be able to complete college, that they may not be able to do what they need to do to advance through the education system in life. And it's important for us to honor the cultural wealth of our students. Each of our students comes with a unique and different perspective. They've managed to get through life perfectly well without us, and we don't seem to honor that piece. So you come with all this navigation and all these skills that you've developed through your own cultural wealth, then how can we access that and lead to completion? Thank you. Okay. So as we thought about that, we thought about what populations are we going to serve? And we decided that we would specifically serve some populations that were previously served by the APS system and some new populations. This year, we rolled out an orientation program. We haven't done an in-person orientation program for quite a while. So we decided that we would take that as a population and reach out to those students. First generation students often don't know what they don't know. So they're super happy to come to orientation and they hear about 10% of everything that we're telling them. So our early outreach folks were calling those students saying, hey, we're early outreach. We saw you came to orientation. Do you know where the bookstore is? Do you know where your classes are? Hey, did you complete your financial aid? Did you do all these different things? So that when the student comes into term, they're ready to go and ready to be successful. We also reach out to term-by-term students who don't reach satisfactory academic progress. And of course, our cumulative SAP, which is our financial aid piece, faculty and staff referrals, and a student who receives a W or a D. Getting good at this. Okay. So how does it work? Well, we worked on working on different things and centralized concepts for every single interaction. And that's really just a really, really fancy way of saying, what does the student need and what do we need to give that student? We talked about students not knowing what they needed, but when we have a relationship with a student and we have connectedness with a student, which is our second point, we're finding out the student's story. And our early outreach folks are really great at teasing those stories out and go, hey, guess what we have for you? Guess what's going on? And building that relationship so that they learn about the student. So again, we can be proactive versus reactive. We also want to personalize the experience. It is not a one size fits all. We talked about cultural wealth and students coming in. Not all students are the same. So why do we treat all students the same? Why are we giving students all exactly the same pieces when this student may need this and this student may need that? And I don't know if you've noticed, but in education or indeed any business, we tend to talk in terminology. Sometimes it's great to have games. It's like, so did you do the APS on the Q4-5 swords? It's like, and we do that with students and students don't understand that. So we as part of that connectedness need to kind of talk a different language and use terminology that a student understands and teach them that terminology moving forward so that if somebody else uses that terminology, they know what's going on. You know, we talked about engagement to connectedness. It's like, we're not just here to have an experience at college through your classes, but how do we engage you in all these other services that could help you at the same time? And how are they going to integrate what they learn and how they learn? So that piece, bringing back in free air and bringing back in Perry, you know, and what was really also important is to go beyond the referral and ask the next question. I think we've all been in a place of business or even sometimes in our college education when we said, hey, how can I help you? Oh, well, I need to talk to somebody about, okay, so could you just go over there and go and stand in that line and go and do over there and give them the runaround? Whereas if we listen to the students say, oh, you need financial aid. What is it about financial aid you need to know? Maybe we can answer that question. Maybe we don't have to send you running across the hall to something else. You know, that proactive piece is, again, we want to get in there with the student before it becomes a major issue. So the plan is moving forward that all students who fall below the minimum GPA completion rate, that's our SAP piece, will receive a personalized holistic intervention plan. So basically what that means is that, hey, we talked about this and our early outreach folks are already starting to do this. We talked about this on the phone and we did this and hey, here's what we recommended. Now look what we're going to follow through with. So how that is working right now is that they get lists of all the people who didn't have a good term or faculty referrals or SAP. And they will call each and every student. We don't send an email, we call each and every student to start that connectedness piece. And after the phone call, we call again if we didn't reach them and we send an email and the email says, hey, guess what? We talked about blah, 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 blah. This is what we recommended to all these different services. TRIO would be great for you. MCC would be great for you. Gender Equity Center would be great for you, whatever that happens to be that we're reminding the student. And then we follow up. And we follow up, say, hey, did this happen? Hey, how can we connect you? Also, our early outreach folks are also sending emails to those different support people and saying, hey, just to let you know, we spoke to Jimmy Smith today and Jimmy Smith may be reaching out to you. And a lot of departments are then reaching out to Jimmy Smith themselves and saying, hey, how can we help you? So that holistic piece as we wrap around services. Okay, we didn't bring any students tonight. The students that we see are students that are having some academic problems and we definitely don't want to out them, but we did get some feedback. This program has only been going since fall term. So basically 4 months. In fall term, 1,755 students were contacted all the orientation students were contacted, which was a little over 400 students, that our 4 new freshman students who received early outreach services had a higher retention rate to winter term of 69%. So all those folks that were freshmen, we carried 69% of them over after identifying them. And that students coming into fall needing services, i.e. that they were already having some issues, they dropped grades, they were on SAP, 66% retained into winter term. That's our highest rate of our retention that we've had. In the past 4 weeks, the amazing 3 people who work in this department have reached over 900 students and contacted them and talked to them in one form or another. We've had 35 staff referrals that have also been reached out to and talked with those students. So I am super excited that in September that hopefully you will call us back and the team can tell you some incredible news. I cannot thank them enough for the work that they've done with so few people, with so many students, and such positive outcome.
Okay, Austin and then Mike.
Overall, it just seems like there's like an ecosystem of support systems, where you working with Trio and maybe even benefits navigators and so forth. I'm really, really glad to hear that. Describe a little bit more about the faculty referral what does that kind of look like as far as like processes? Is it faculty sees a student? Oh, yeah, excellent.
So we have Tammy Gollock, who's actually the director over this program, and I'm going to ask her to address it. So we have 2 systems going right now. We have a generalized system, which is a Google Sheet that staff can fill, so faculty can kill it. But we also have an incredible system called the
Early Alert System in EAB.
Excellent.
So early alert system and faculty are just now getting trained on how to use that. But when they log into EAB, they can pull up their class roster. They can select like 5 students at a time on their list and say, these students aren't attending class. It'll automatically shoot over to the early outreach team, who will then reach out to the student. Depending on the reason the referral is being made, the student will also get notified that a referral is being made as well by the faculty member. And then the faculty that made the referral can actually track the progress of that. So they can see when an early outreach team member met with or contacted that student, the interchange that took place in that conversation. They can see if the case is closed because it was resolved. They were unable to reach the student, so it was unresolved. All of that is tracked within the EAB data system. We also have a few faculty that are still using email. And so we've received lots of emails now. We're trying to switch that to EAB, and so we'll be updating the website here shortly.
We think there's actually more staff referrals than we can track right now because we're going to email this.
Totally. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Suspect that the numbers are a tad higher.
Yeah.
But it's great that they're reaching out.
And quick follow-up. So obviously this, we can identify students. What if it's a self-identification? Like a student just literally goes, I need help here, waving their hands, kind of going, hey, I need help. What does that process look like for our students?
They can handle that. So they would have the same conversation with the student, and maybe face-to-face or via email or by phone call or virtual. Actually, there's 4 modes, but anyway, and they would find out exactly what was going on so that they could determine who the options for that student as far as the resources within the community.
Excellent.
Within Lane.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Mike.
Thank you for the work you're doing. It's really important. In fact, it's so important that I wonder I imagine at times it's hard to stop doing the work so you can collect data. I'm wondering about disaggregated data, if there's any way to disaggregate some of your data so that we can try and tell how we're doing by different categories of students.
We can in the EAB system, we can tell where we sent students, what the student's issue was, what the outcome was, how many referrals are going to mental health, how many referrals are sent to Trio, how many referrals are sent to CAR, whichever department that is. We can track that. In terms of tracking disaggregated data, in terms of our diversity, that becomes a little more difficult, but not impossible.
We are, Kathy Thomas, institutional researcher here at Lane, is working on connecting EAB data with the data that we have in Banner, so she can merge that information and dial that down even more than what we can do right now.
Thanks.
Steve?
Just echoing what the others had to say about, thanks and kudos for the program.
Thank these guys.
Well, thank you.
They're the stars of the show.
You mentioned the 66 and 69% retention rates or persistence rates from fall to winter, I think this past year, right? Just
Yes.
right now, sort of ongoing. Can you give us a sense of what it was prior to the program? So we have some benchmark to work against, and then the follow-up question is, how do you know, what are you aiming for? How do you know when you've hit your goals?
100%.
I figured you would say that.
So the ideal thing would be, we would not, let me go to that piece. The ideal thing would be that our number of students that are in financial aid difficulty has shrunk. That our number of students that are being referred by faculty increase, so we can get them early before they get into issues. So we're looking at things that we want to shrink. We want to shrink the SAPs. We want to shrink the term by terms. We want to shrink those, and we want to increase this piece of faculty reaching out to us so that we could get them before the end of term and being installed. In terms of the data of where they were, I believe, and Kathy Thomas would be the exact person to ask. I believe it was hovering, depending upon the year, between 58 and 62.
Yeah. Okay. What would be useful for me is to tie it to the persistence numbers that the previous report showed, right? So we have the numbers we have. To what I'm looking for, I assume some of the other board members as well, is what programs are having impact, and so that we can start to figure out, well, where should we be investing greater resources? So that's the stuff that's useful to us, because that's the kind of thing that we end up by doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've got a couple of things going on with it. This is retention versus persistence, and the retention will lead to the persistence. So I think it is that whole thing. I think as a college with our guided pathways plans, as we move towards that holistic student support across campus, we'll see the retention rises over campus as well as persistence as we do those wraparound services. What we found on campus is there are lots of programs and lots of great work, but there are little pockets of students that know about them. And so bringing that round so that we interconnect all those different pieces, bring them, and that's been a major part of the early outreach and the knowledge that they have. They really have an encyclopedic knowledge of everything on campus to be able to connect all the dots. And as we expand that, I believe that college will see that overall.
I would like to see orientation, more students attend orientation, and then the wraparound services with the follow-up of early outreach, making that phone call before school starts. And then they also call around week 3 of the term, and then again, right around the withdrawal date. So they check on them throughout that term as well. And the hope is that by working with those students and getting to know them early, that will prevent them from ending up on SAP and in trouble. So I'm hoping we'll see some improvements that way.
Yeah, I'll try to make it quick.
Holly?
Thank you. Thank you for that report. It's interesting, but I'm just curious if at any point in this proactive approach to student success and better retention rates, are we ever asking the student what they need, what we can do better, what services we can provide, what are we missing, right, in their approach towards student success? Is there anything in this? I don't see anything in the report that gives us some feedback from the students.
The student fit, the conversation that the early outreach people are having with the student to create that relationship. One of the main questions that they ask is what is the student needing? What does the student think that they need? Not what we think that needs. We can look at a transcript or we can look at a historical record and say, well, we think you need this. But when we have a connectedness piece with a student, we learn their story, we learn that they feel that they are not part of an identity group, and we connect them with an identity group on campus, or they feel that they didn't understand the work, and we connect them with a tutor. We're connecting those dots so that students learn those different pieces so that they can have that information and go forward with what they need to do.
Thank you.
Austin?
I'll make this quick since the timer's over. What are some of the major barriers that you've seen this population of students? What have been some of the major barriers and themes of barriers that you've seen?
I find financial is always a major barrier for students. Financial literacy is a huge piece that we see. Health is a huge piece. Mental health, we know mental health is a big issue across campus. I think the bottom line is when you have first generation students, when third generation students don't know what they don't know. They don't know how to navigate what is often a complex system, or how to connect to those students. So a feeling of belonging to the college, a feeling that the college cares about them. I think, in some of those comments, you sort of like, oh my God, I'm talking to a real person. Somebody actually reached out to me. I believe that the college as a whole cares, but sometimes we're not great at giving that message to the students. So, financial literacy, financial aid, mental health problems, what is known as technological immigrants, our non-traditional students that we say, hey, just go online and do this. And it's like, I can barely send a text. Those kinds of things are barriers, and now upload this to the internet and take this Moodle course and take those different things. So again, it moves back to looking at what our student population is and what our students identify as those different things, and looking for those patterns and helping them through that, and what can we do to connect them with services, or to connect them with that as part of that learning engagement piece, versus we're going to tell you what you need. You've told us, now we're going to tell you how to get that.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What would you imagine is the frequency with which you will collect this data? I mean, I'm assuming you'll collect it every term, but
we collect it weekly, daily. But for the retention pieces, we collect it end of every term.
Then I guess what we'll do offline is we'll talk with President Balter about how frequently the board would like to see it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Very, very, very educational. That brings us to our organization reports. And do we have a student present online?
Yep.
There you are.
Yeah, online today.
You are up.
Apologies. We couldn't attend in person. All right. Well, good evening, Board of Education and President Belger. On behalf of the Lane SGA, I have prepared a report regarding what we've been working on since our return to office in January. The Lane SGA resumed office on January 9th, 2023. As predicted, we hit the ground running as we entered phase 2 of the Lane SGA revival. Our primary objective for this term is to foster student engagement, represent the needs of all students, and continue to advocate for student resources across Oregon. Joining us this term is our Eugene campus organizer, Skylar Trevark from the Oregon Student Association, OSA. Skylar will be our contact person for OSA and will be working with the Lane SGA as well as the associated students of the University of Oregon, ASUO. Student Life and Leadership have also appointed a new interim director, Desiree Woodruff, who will be the new advisor to the Lane SGA. We are looking forward to working with both Skylar and Desiree to achieve our goals and best serve our student body. Beginning with student engagement, the SGA is now hosting a weekly winter-themed event on Mondays called Warm Up Your Week. The main purpose of this event is to provide our student body with a grab-and-go service that serves warm beverages and light lunch items. However, students who are not in a rush are also able to speak with our officers to address any concerns or ideas that they may have. Our first Warm Up Your Week occurred on Monday, and I am proud to say that it was a huge success. We do not yet have a definite time set for this event, as we are experimenting with the times that are best to serve the majority of our in-person student population. Long term, the Lane SGA are also drafting up a formal event, which we plan to host in the spring term. We hope that the hosting of events will drive up our student engagement numbers and encourage student participation in more in-person events, which will ultimately bring more students to campus. Moving forward to student needs, we were concerned with the news of the Rainy Day Food Pantry temporarily closing at the beginning of the term, but are relieved to report that the food pantry will be reopening as of next week. Food insecurity still remains a crucial issue that we are continuing to work on and find solutions to. Food insecurity was a major factor in our decision to host a weekly event that distributes complimentary food items to our student body. Our relationship with OSU and ASUO has also continued to strengthen, and now we have LCC student representatives across the entire General Assembly of OSA. Amaya and I serve on the Board of Governors for OSA. We then have 2 students serving on the Oregon Students of Color Coalition, OSOC, which represents the students of color, and 2 students serving on the Oregon Students Equal Rights Association, OSERA, which represents our LGBTQ+ students. Both OSOC and OSERA will be hosting symposiums that will take place in the spring term. Amaya and I also recently met with the campaign organizer of OSBERG, Sophia Pacente, to discuss how we can recruit and revitalize the LCC OSBERG chapter. OSBERG is a statewide, student-run, student-funded, non-profit working towards a greener and healthier future. OSBERG is also working to advocate for students facing food insecurities. By collaborating with OSBERG, OSA, and ASUO, we believe that we are on the right track to find a solution to food insecurity across the state of Oregon. Long term, we are also currently amending our constitution and bylaws to reflect the current Lane SGA protocols and procedures. We hope to have our updated governing documents ratified later this month. We are also planning on bringing forward the election timeline for the Lane SGA of the 2023-24 academic year. We hope to have the new officials elected halfway through the spring term so that the new officials can shadow the current officials and thus have a smoother transition into their period of office, which will hopefully allow them to reach their full potential during their time in office. As always, I appreciate the time and efforts that the board has put into supporting us as a student government and our student body. We look forward to continuing to strengthen our relationship with the board and LCC leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Terrific report. Thank you very much. Adrian, now a report from LCCEA.
Good evening, members of the board, President Bulger. I'll be speaking on a few topics tonight. First, welcome and kudos. So on behalf of the faculty, we would like to extend a most warm welcome to the new Vice President of Academic Affairs, Dr. Shelley Tinkham. We'd also like to congratulate faculty member Jim Garcia, who has received the prestigious Dale Parnell Distinguished Faculty designation from the AACC. In addition to his work at LCC, Jim has served as the board chair for ODHC, a nonprofit serving farm workers and underserved communities. And kudos to faculty member Indy Bakshi for her selection by the U.S. State Department as one of only 200 individuals chosen as an English language fellow this year. We have a few updates, campus updates. First, we've learned that additional funding has been allocated to provide tutoring to students in the STEM learning zone and greatly appreciate the restoration of this critical service for our students. Regarding shared governance, faculty and other campus stakeholders have questions and concerns about new interpretations of the governance system. As a result, Faculty Council has formed a task force, and the College Council Subcommittee has convened meetings to review the proposed changes. An invitation for you all for tomorrow, Faculty Professional Development's Democracy Conversation Series is hosting the Exploring the Misinformation Landscape event from 3 o'clock until 4:15. News literacy expert Alexa Volland of the News Literacy Project will provide a workshop where participants will learn how to teach students to move beyond the unhelpful term fake news and to more precisely identify the many types of misleading, inaccurate, and false information that they encounter. In the month of January, LCCEA hosted 2 local legislators on campus. We welcomed Senator Manning with a morning coffee with health professions deans and the dental hygiene and assisting faculty, then had a tour of the dental clinic where he had the opportunity to meet instructors, students, and patients. And that was followed by a roundtable discussion with President Bulger, welding faculty member, career pathways faculty, and other faculty focused on legislative needs and community college needs, especially that $855 million we're all asking for. We spent an afternoon with Representative Lively last Friday, who graciously dedicated 4 hours to his LCC visit. After the coordinated handoff from administration, our LCCEA hosted time included a tour of campus, cupcakes, a roundtable with manufacturing and fitness faculty, a student worker from Career Pathways, among others, followed by a lively observation of an EMS class. In addition, manufacturing faculty member Chuck Nichols presented Rep. Lively with an LCC student manufactured award that he can put on his desk in Salem. Last, unfortunately, I have to include a report about possible retrenchments. We were surprised and dismayed to begin the term with notice to LCCEA about possible retrenchments, which would impact in part or in full one faculty member in political science and all 3 faculty in sociology. Among other serious questions and concerns, the timing of this notice, more than 2 months before contractual deadlines, when enrollment has just had a healthy increase, and only days before a new vice president would arrive, is highly irregular. These social science disciplines are central to our mission and the quintessential function of community colleges in a vibrant democracy. Information provided thus far indicates that the proposed reductions, if they move forward, would reduce class sections offered and students served based on actual current enrollment levels, reducing enrollment and tuition level as well. LCC simply cannot afford to cut transfer programs which generate net revenue and keep our college afloat. The administration has agreed to examine the data, and we are confident a better, more reasonable solution is possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Frankie, are you with us? We're looking for a report from LCCEF. And there she is.
Yep. Hello. So thank you very much, Rosie. So I want to say my name is Frankie Kokenor, the president of LCCEF, and my pronouns are she and hers. It's good to see everyone. This month, our executive committee has been active as we've all been engaged in work with the students and the college with the first few weeks of winter term. We're working on some labor issues with human resources, and we'll hope that we'll be able to get good outcomes for our members. This last year in December, our AFT representative, Brian Lawley, took a position with one of the Portland State University's unions. Many of you may have met Brian. He's been an excellent, engaged, and knowledgeable resource for us for quite a while. We will surely miss him. It's pretty bad that we've lost him, but we're really excited to announce that our new AFT Oregon representative, Mish Drilling, has joined us, and she's jumped right in, and we look forward to her input. We're excited about it. This year, we will bargain our full contract with the college. Our bargaining team has been reviewing and preparing for this upcoming work. I'm hopeful that bargaining will go well, and we'll keep the board informed of how the bargaining goes as we move forward through it. Classified professionals at Lane Community College, they continue to be fully dedicated to our students in the daily work that we're doing. We look forward to a fair and equitable bargaining process with an outcome that values the important contributions in student success. So thank you very much.
Thank you. You have in your packet tonight a number of information reports. Do board members have questions or observations about any of these reports? There being none, we've reached the good of the order section of our agenda. And I would like to take the opportunity to tell you why I gave each of you a copy of the instrument that the board historically has used to perform a self-evaluation on an annual basis. The reason is Angela and I volunteered last October to take on the project of refining the instrument that we ultimately use to conduct a self-evaluation. And what I'd like to do is ask each of you, and Holly will get this to you online, I'll email it to you. I would like you to take this home and kind of review it again, and then email to me and or Angela any of your observations about the deficiencies of this particular instrument. As I recall, we wanted to make our self-evaluation process focus more specifically on the board's goals, the president's goals, and so on. But there may be aspects of this instrument that we want to persist in using, or particular parts of it that you really find worthless. So it would be helpful to get some concrete, specific feedback from members of the board about what aspects of this instrument don't work for you, and what you are looking for in a self-evaluation instrument. It's up to us, up to Angela and I, to bring forward a proposed instrument by April. The board would discuss and review that instrument and come to some agreements about whether or not it meets our needs. And then we would ask each of us to fill it out and get it back to Celia by a date specific in May. And then I would expect that the board would make the results of that self-evaluation one of the subjects for discussion in a July retreat. If we have not forwarded to members of the board a proposed date for a July retreat, we'll do that ASAP. So we get that on your calendars if we haven't already done so. I know we've talked about a date that you may want to hold in reserve so that you have time to meet with each other and discuss this among all the other things that you'll want to talk to each other about, but we'll get that to you ASAP as well. So that's why you have that. Any questions or concerns about that? Okay. Any particular comments or reports from board members? Austin?
Yeah, a couple. So with OCCA, I attached the OCC monthly update. The big tool that I just want to advocate that our board members check out is the Legislative Session Advocacy Toolkit. It's a link that's in the newsletter, and it's really helpful with a variety of different aspects of this legislative session. And when you speak to a legislator in whatever events that you go out to, it's a great and handy tool for that. I'm participating in the legislative committee where we're doing a lot of great work, a lot of great conversations to get us to that $855 million budget for us. And and another thing I wanted to, another thing to just kind of follow. And if you haven't used OLIS, which is the legislative website to follow different bills, Senate Bill 523 is one that I would definitely highly recommend following, which in regards to Bachelor's of Science in Nursing degrees with Oregon Community Colleges. So that's a bill to definitely follow up, especially with our recent bachelor's degree that we passed for business management. Those are the major OCCA reports. And I have another thing, but I can wait if there's anything else. I really appreciate the presentation, especially economic data and so forth. Another part of resource our resource navigator, STEP program and stuff like that. So I really appreciate that. Another area that I would like the board to have a presentation on is the Small Business Development Center. I think it's a great resource to our community that we are a big funder of. And, we talk a lot about, training the next, training our workforce, training people into jobs, but we're also training employers and job creators in our community. And I think it would be really educational for the board to see what they provide to our community. So a future presentation on that would be great. So, yeah.
Any other good of the order items, board members? It does occur to me that we had planned to schedule a board meeting down in Cottage Grove. And so Steve and I'll talked to President Bulger offline in our weekly meeting about, are we on track to do that and when we had planned to do it, right? I can't call it up top of mind, but it was coming up in this spring. And the goal was to have the opportunity to see the new federally qualified health clinic. So I think we've done it, gang. So we are adjourned.
Thank you.